New Year celebrations are typically filled with joy, but for some, it can turn into a haunting nightmare. Take the case in Japan precisely 24 years ago. In December 2000, a family faced a horrifying tragedy as they were brutally murdered in their home in Tokyo. Despite the killer leaving behind several clues, he skillfully evaded capture. The case continues to baffle investigators, leaving questions behind to this day. The police are tirelessly on the lookout, determined to bring justice to this unsettling mystery that has cast a shadow over the new year for over 2 decades. But with each passing day, the chances that the killer would be captured become thinner and thinner. January 2001, Tokyo. Officer Takeshi Tsushida, being the chief officer at Seijo Police Station, was given the responsibility to solve this high-profile case quickly. Initially, things seemed promising, with personal items and evidence left by the culprit providing important leads. However, as time passed, it became more and more difficult. One reason for this was that the DNA found at the crime scene didn't seem to match anything in the national database, making it more difficult to identify the killer. Without this crucial lead, investigators turned to witness and surveillance evidence. Unfortunately, there wasn't much to work with. The CCTV cameras around the area didn't capture the killer, and the few witness accounts available lacked helpful details. The frustration was growing as the case seemed to hit dead ends at every turn, but the police did not give up yet. Putting the crime scene photos back into the case file, Officer Takeshi Tsushida looked at the blank A4 paper he intended to use for planning the next steps in the investigation. Besides considering checking DNA evidence in neighboring countries, the page remained empty and challenging. Tsushida, an experienced investigator, found this case particularly tough. The brutality and horror of the crime scene had deeply affected him. Despite efforts to keep the gruesome details from the public, the department's reputation was suffering. Updating his superiors on the case, Tsushida noticed their concerned looks and tired sighs. He was also asked to address accusations of incompetence and inefficiency in newspaper articles, which mainly referred to past issues in the Tokyo Metropolitan Police that had already been resolved. With determination, Tsushida stared at the blank page, vowing to find and punish the killer, regardless of the personal cost. He was committed to overcoming any obstacle to identify the person who had brutally taken the lives of 4 innocent family members. The investigators assigned to the Setegaya killings quickly worked to piece together a timeline of the victims' final hours on December 30th. Like many other families in Tokyo that day, the victims had spent the day preparing to welcome the new year together. Throughout their day, the Miyazawa family went shopping, made plans for the next day's celebrations with relatives over the phone, had dinner, and spent the evening watching television before going to bed. Michio Miyazawa, the 44-year-old head of the household, worked for a marketing company and checked work-related emails on his computer during the day. His wife Yasuko looked after their 2 children, 8-year-old Nina and her little brother Ray. Around 11:30 p.m., while the family was asleep, a dark figure emerged from a nearby park behind their home. This mysterious person quietly moved from a group of trees, scaled another tree in the garden, and removed a protective screen from the second-floor bathroom window. After entering through the now open window, the intruder went to the nearest bedroom where 6-year-old Ray was sleeping. The attacker strangled the boy with his bare hands. This grotesque act caused a disturbance, prompting Michio to run upstairs from the first floor where he had been sleeping. A brief and brutal struggle occurred between Michio and the assailant, who was armed with a traditional Japanese kitchen knife. The intruder repeatedly stabbed Michio in the head so forcefully that the blade broke off. Although Michio managed to inflict some minor injuries on the attacker before dying, he couldn't survive the strength and brutality of the assault he faced. After Michio's body fell down the stairs, the killer followed and repeatedly attacked it on the first-floor landing with the broken knife. After this brutal act, the killer went back upstairs to the second floor, where he inflicted even more savage injuries on Yasuko and her daughter. he used a kitchen knife from the Miyazawa kitchen to end their lives. With his apparent goal achieved, the murderer unplugged the phone line but decided not to escape. Instead, he stayed inside the house for several hours, performing seemingly ordinary tasks. Ignoring the bloodied bodies, he found the family's first aid kit and treated his injuries, leaving used dressings on the floor. After cleaning and bandaging his cuts, the killer went to the family's kitchen. There he made barley tea, ate melon slices from the fridge, and consumed 4 ice creams from the freezer. After this, it seems the attacker took a nap on one of the living room sofas for an hour or two. Upon waking up, he used Michio's computer for a while, used one of the toilets without flushing, and finally left the house in the early hours, leaving behind many clues and enough DNA for the police to solve this case rather quickly. But they were more than wrong. On New Year's Eve, the police quickly found that the family's killer had left a broken murder weapon at the scene. It had both his blood and the victim's blood on it. Strangely, he also left a small bag on the floor containing highlighter pens and a bit of sand. They collected these items and sent them for forensic analysis, hoping to identify the killer. Along with clothing fibers found, these clues were important in figuring out who he was. A clue you wouldn't think of would spark a small beacon of hope in the investigators. The killer's DNA and fingerprints were analyzed, but they didn't match anything in Japan's national databases. From the analysis, they could tell he was male, of mixed heritage with one parent likely from southern Europe or the Mediterranean region. His blood type was A, and based on the wounds he caused, he was thought to be right-handed, slim and around 170 centimeters tall. Examining the force used in the murders, they estimated his age to be between 15 and 35 years old. However, beyond these details, nothing more conclusive about him could be confirmed. The examination of the fecal matter left in the toilet at the crime scene revealed that the killer had eaten a simple meal of string beans and sesame seeds the day before the murders. It was later confirmed that both the kitchen knife used and the killer's clothing were bought in Japan's Kanagawa prefecture, which is over an hour's drive away. Over time, the police found out that only 130 units of the killer's sweater were made and sold. Unfortunately, they could only locate 12 people who had bought these garments. A surprising clue came from analyzing the sand found inside the abandoned bag, adding to the mystery of the attacker's identity. Scientists have traced a certain type of particle back to the Nevada desert in California, specifically around the Edwards Air Force Base. Since a family was murdered in that area, various ideas have been proposed about who might be responsible. These ideas differ in how believable and credible they are. Unfortunately, the evidence collected by the police is so limited that none of the suggestions seems more realistic than the others. One common theory is that the family may have been targeted by a stalker or sexual predator. Some psychologists point to the difference in injuries between female and male victims, suggesting the killer might have had a deep hatred for women. Another idea is that the extreme violence indicates a crime of passion, possibly involving someone obsessed with Yasuko Miyazawa or an associate who felt wronged by the family in the past. Despite looking into known sexual predators and post-murder crimes, as well as questioning friends and extended family, no concrete evidence has been found to support these theories beyond mere speculation. If the Miyazawa family had done something wrong in the past, it hasn't been discovered yet. Another popular idea, aside from the family's history, is that the killer might have been a migrant or a drifter. The house, like many others in Japan, was close to a transportation hub, leading some to think the killer traveled around the country using the extensive rail network. But this would not answer his intention for the horrible act. Some believe a man named Paul Mueller was responsible for a series of killings in the southwestern United States in the late 1800s, including the infamous Villisca axe murders. According to this belief, he would travel by train through isolated rural areas, look for casual work, break into family homes, and use their own tools to commit the murders. This murder could be something similar. Since the 1980s, Japan has experienced an increase in immigration from nearby Asian countries. Additionally, the country faced issues with drifters in the 1990s due to financial instability, leaving many unemployed and struggling. Some individuals never fully recovered and chose not to reintegrate into society, feeling let down. Instead of someone connected to the Miyazawa family, is it possible that the targeting was entirely random? Could the killer have picked their house by chance, being the first one he encountered as he left the nearby park? Another theory is that he saw them shopping and decided to follow them home on impulse. The sand found at the scene, potentially linking to Edwards Air Force Base, led some to suggest the killer might be one of the 50,000 US military personnel stationed in Japan at the time. Unfortunately, American servicemen and contractors have been involved in high-profile crimes in the country, causing national outrage and calls for their removal. This theory could also explain the mixed DNA profile recovered from the killer. The investigators continue to look for clues and information to finally find the murderer. Some far-reaching theories about the murders relate to the open space behind the family home. There are suggestions that the Miyazawas were offered a large sum of money to move, allowing authorities to demolish their house, and others for park expansion. Rumors also circulate that Mikio had some altercation with a local skateboard park gang in the weeks leading up to his death. Some believe that a biker or street gang might have killed Mikio and his family because of a possible disagreement or disrespect. As of now, the Tokyo Metropolitan Police still have a team of 35 officers working on solving the mystery of the Miyazawa family murders. The investigation has collected over 12,500 pieces of evidence, and there have been more than 15,000 tips from the public through a police information line. After leading the case for 8 years, Takeshi Sushida retired, but continues to pursue it independently. For 20 years, the police have held an annual service of remembrance at the crime scene. There's a reward of 20 million yen, over $150,000, the largest ever in Japan, for reliable information leading to the arrest of the suspect in the Miyazawa family's case. Japan got rid of its time limit for prosecuting murder only in 2010. Otherwise, the killer might have escaped punishment, even if caught. The police are actively working on the investigation, with over 280,000 investigators involved and over 16,000 tips followed up on. The Miyazawa family's house, where the tragedy occurred, is still standing, contrary to the initial plan to demolish it after they moved out. 3 years ago, Yasuka's older sister, Anna-Rie, opened the house for reporters. In a video of that tour, you can see boxes of the family's belongings returned by the police. Some of their furniture is still there, and on one wall, there are penciled lines marking the children's growth. A round plaque with the family's name, surrounded by flowers, hangs on the outside wall by the front door. What are your thoughts? Do you think the killer will be found one day? Let us know in the comments below.